Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining this session. It's going to be an interesting session because not I'm here because we have such an interesting topic. We are the only session today that talks about cotton and water in cotton specifically. And that's interesting because it goes through the complete value chain. So I'm very happy we have the perspectives today of not just the corporates, but also going back to the farmer. We have the NGO, we have the consulting company, we have technology, we have the producer as well. So they all have their perspectives on water, and we all know how important water is for growing cotton. So also thanks for the people online. Please put your questions into the chat. We will read them. So as you can see on the screen, it's about smart water strategy. And smart means you have to measure things in order to see where you are, but also where you want to go. And there are a lot of targets, ambitions around cotton. So the smart part will be part of this discussion today as well. Before I move into a great panel, I have a question for you here in the audience. So you know, cotton is very water intensive. But if you look to the total water footprint of cotton, let's say your t-shirt, if it's cotton, what is the biggest water user in the footprint? Is it A, growing the cotton into the fields? Or is it B, you as a consumer wearing and owning that shirt? So who goes for A, growing the cotton? 1, 2, 3, 4, a couple of hands. And who thinks it's you as a consumer owning the shirt? So probably around 50-50, if I look carefully. And you're both right, because it all is about the perspective on the metrics. How do you measure things? So if you really measure it from the seed to producing a shirt, more than 90, I would say 95% of the water is being used to grow cotton. If you look at the total life cycle of your shirt, then you as a consumer have the biggest responsibility by washing it time over time. So it's all about metrics and measuring things, and how do you do that? And that basically, and I don't have the clicker, I just recall. If I go to the next slide, we basically are also here as experts to look at those metrics. So we basically look at the impact that we can make for the value chain. So they all look at outcome-based strategies, and basically using accurate data. And the accurate data can come from satellite imaging, thank you very much. Satellite imaging, advanced geospatial data, climate models. So a lot of data is there that we use, and not just for water, we do that also for biodiversity, for the climate change and agriculture. And that's a very specific part for cotton. And basically, it's not providing just data to comply, where a lot of companies are looking to, but it's also how to make it actionable. How to turn that data into actionable data, where also farmers who grow cotton can use and see how they treat water from a quality perspective, but also quantity perspective. So basically, that field level perspective is important, and that's also where we come into play. So 52 and Elif welcome you to this session. And before I'm going to introduce a very great panel, I have to say, I would like to give the stage to the CEO of CottonConnect. And CottonConnect is a leading NGO promoting sustainable, but also ethical and transparent practices across the chain of cotton. And I'm very proud to have her as a keynote speaker. So please give a warm hand for Alison Ward.
So good afternoon, good to see you all today. I'm just going to start with some global stats, which may be very familiar to you. A UNESCO report in 2024 showed that over half the world's population would experience some kind of water scarcity within an annual year. We're also seeing floods and droughts really impacting on lives and livelihoods. And also in the report, this showed that in 2022, a staggering 2.2 billion people didn't have access to safe, managed drinking water. So that's 2.2 billion people. And of that, 4 out of 5 are in rural communities. So as we look at water and we look at climate change, we can really see that there's a real impact on rural communities. And at CottonConnect, we work with over 800,000 cotton farmers across 6 markets and really look from farm right up to fashion and have traceable cotton right from a farmer to garment, and that's quite important for us. But perhaps I can take you back to our programs and take you to northwest India, to the state of Gujarat, and talk to you about Kumidaben Tadvi, who's a woman farmer in our regenerative agriculture program. And when I spoke to her, I met her about a year ago, she knew that the climate was changing and she knew that it was having an impact on weather and it was having an impact on her crops. But she didn't know why and thought it was divine intervention. So the first thing she learned was about climate change. And for me, that was really humbling to meet a woman who really didn't know the things that we know and we take for granted. And from there, we were able to build her knowledge and that of her community. We're really seeing a real impact at the front line with our cotton farmers really being affected by climate change. So that can be erratic monsoon. And we work with the Self-Employed Women's Association also in Gujarat in India. And I was in one of their field offices last year and I saw somebody was just doing a really simple tracking of rainfall data. And what we saw in the middle of the monsoon was a gap where it just hadn't rained and it should be raining. And imagine the impact that has on a livelihood where you're just not getting the rain you're expecting from your crop. It means that your crop might be failing, and this just isn't cotton. These farmers, they grow other crops, whether it be soy, whether it be local legumes for sale. So a real impact on the crop with this erratic monsoon. It's also meaning that farmers don't know what to do next because a lot of their farming methodology is governed by the seasons. So suddenly if it stops raining, what am I supposed to be doing now in my cotton cycle? So really losing that knowledge of the crop and how they farm. We're also seeing really impactful flooding, and it was 2022 in Pakistan when whole cotton areas just lost the entirety of their tops, or 2,000 lives were lost, and it was around $400 million worth of damage was done. It was the first time as an organisation that we actually put in humanitarian aid. And one of the reasons we were able to do that so quickly was we knew where our farmers were and we knew how to access the farmers we work with. So we were able to trigger really quickly some immediate support for those people who had lost their homes. And that is all about traceability and transparency. And I really believe that if we are to have sustainable supply chains, we have to understand who is in our supply chains, the environmental impact we're having, and we just talked about the impact of cotton and water, and the people in those supply chains. But that only comes through having transparency. I've been enrolled for around 11 years, and when I came to this sector, it was very, very opaque. We didn't really know how cotton was moving through the supply chain, how it was traded. But over that time, we've really done the hard miles to understand that beginning of the supply chain, working with farmers to really understand how that cotton's produced and how it moves through the various stages. We're also seeing very extreme heat with temperatures over 50 degrees C. And as you can imagine, so we've got erratic monsoon, we've got flooding, and we've got extreme heat. All of that is impacting on livelihoods of farmers. And not only is it about livelihoods, but it's about health and well-being. And when I spoke to some women about a climate change report we put together that we published earlier this year, they were really talking about the anxiety they faced about the future for their families and the future for their children. And I think quite often in this debate we forget the impact on mental health of some of these big weather events or some of the uncertainty that we face. So it's really, I think, a growing need in our sector and beyond to really look at the broader implications of some of the climatic changes we face. It's not just environmental, but it's about people's physical and mental health as well. So at CottonConnect, we have very, very practical solutions, and that means they're scalable, replicable. So first of all, we talked about knowledge, and Kumira Ben is one of our climate change ambassadors, and she is trained herself, and then she is given the remit to go and train other female farmers. So there's a cascade of peer-to-peer learning that goes through that program, and it's a very effective way of getting information out into a rural community. We then do things that, if any of you have your own garden or are involved in agriculture, may sound very familiar, and that includes effective management of runoff and erosion control. So that's very simply perhaps through an earth mound around the plants, or it could just be teaching contour planting, so you plant around the contour of the hill. So again, very, very simple techniques that really help maintain the soil and deal with runoff as well. We also teach methods on rainfall harvesting, so soak pits that can then recharge groundwater, but also then a source of water in the drier months. Enhancing soil capacity through mulching and intercropping, also a really simple technique that really enhances the soil but also retains moisture. So these simple techniques really help farmers have demonstrable gains and really have an impact on their crop. And I can see the difference between a farm that's taken some of those techniques and a farm who hasn't, and you can see the difference in the size of the crop. Of course, where appropriate, and we'll see a little video soon, we do introduce technology, and again, it's not advanced technology such as drip irrigation, and that really depends on the water source that's available to those farmers. And we can see through all of this really incredible impacts. We've recently done a life cycle assessment, and we're seeing that water use has decreased by over 20%. So we can really see already some of these very simple techniques through adoption can really have a really good impact in terms of the water use at a farm level. And then as we look forward, we were talking earlier, Mark and I, about how do we begin to use technology, and how do we take some of this amazing technology we have and take it into a rural setting. It has to be easy, it has to be cost effective, it has to be replicable. We've done some work with the European Space Agency in Bangladesh, where we looked at using big satellite data and how we took that into farmers and how they use that information in terms of crop planning and crop cycling. We've also been able to work with the Bangladesh Meteorological Department and with the European Space Agency, and have set up a flood warning system. So within a couple of hours, we can get a flood warning out to farmers in rural Bangladesh, which it's a flood-prone country. As you can imagine, that really could be saving lives and livelihoods. So really, technology can be a great force for the future, and I think we really need to understand how we can apply some of this great technology in those rural communities. And we were also talking about how we then give that technology to farmers as a tool for them to use to manage their own farms. It's not just us taking data, but we're also providing data into farmers as well. We can't do this effectively unless we work in partnership. And at CottonConnect, we've got a number of strategic partnerships, whether it would be with cotton research organisations or with cotton boards in the 6 markets we work with. And that means that we're able to take the information, the success we've had, and take that to scale through working through government organisations and departments. So a really important piece on that's the working more broadly within the communities. But finally, perhaps I can go back to Kumira Ben from Gujarat. When I met her, she really didn't know very much about her cotton crop, and she wasn't involved in decision making. But by becoming a climate change ambassador and by having this knowledge, she now stands more tall and more proud. And when I met her, she said how proud she was to be a climate change ambassador. You could see her shoulders are up and a big smile. She had the confidence to talk in the village. She had the confidence to talk to me. She also said she's now involved in joint decision making with her husband, and together they farm, whereas before she didn't really have that knowledge or wasn't involved in that process. So she has more status in the village, more status in the family. So as we look at water and we look at climate change, we also have to look at this incredible social impact we can have as well through our programs, where we're giving people knowledge, but we're giving them status and recognition for the work that they do. Thank you. Should I stay on? Thank you. Okay.
Well, really great to hear. Can you hear me in the room? Oh, you lost connection. Okay. Well, my voice is loud enough for the room, so I will just continue, hopefully online as well. So we don't just touch the aspect of the water quality, the quantity, but also the social aspects and the livelihood of those farmers. So during the session, we will have a short video where we interviewed Rajan Ben in India to get her perspectives on how she deals with water and the issues that she faces. Because I always feel we talk about farmers, we have a lot of interesting people in the room, but the farmers are never included in those discussions and how they can make a difference. It has to start with them. So that basically we will get as well. But I would like to introduce the other panelists on stage with me. So first of all, I would like to welcome Kathleen Vos. She is the Global Water Stewardship Lead from Gap Inc., well-aware apparel brands. I would like to have Emma Clark as well. She's the Senior Private Sector Advisor of WaterAid. Mr. Calvin Woolley. He's the Global Sustainable Business Manager at IKEA for textiles. We will have also on stage Peter Penning. And Peter is the Director of Sustainability of the management consulting SWCA. And we will have 2 people joining us online today. So hopefully the Zoom call will work. And welcome, first of all, Ms. Ikra Inam. She's the Head of Sustainability for Sapphire Textile Mills. So she's joining from Pakistan. And we have Beatrice Baresi, and she is the Senior Sustainable Applications Officer at the European Space Agency. So if I look to all those people here, I think we don't have all the time to get all the perspectives, but I for sure think we have a good understanding of the value chain and how we look from a different perspective towards water. So before going into a discussion, I will just give you a few words to introduce you shortly, that people know what you do and what the company does. Some it's obvious, some a bit less. So maybe Peter, in a few words.
Yeah, my name is Peter Penning. My job is really making sure that whatever water a company, my clients, are using is going to be a sustainable source that will not only be good enough for that particular client, but will also not take away from the local communities or from nature. And that's pretty much all I do, in a few words.
It's nice if you can put that in one phrase. I'll try next time as well. Calvin.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Don't know if I can be so sharp as Peter, but I work for IKEA. I guess most of you know what IKEA is and what we do. But I work with, and my team works with Scope 3, so the production units in our supply chain, especially focused on textile manufacturing and, of course, our comfort side of things. So textiles is a big commodity within IKEA, and of course we have a big focus on the sustainability side when it comes to production of our goods and textiles. So.
Yeah, I was supposed not to ask any questions about meat, so I will not. So this is not the session, but we had a very interesting discussion how meat is a very giant, let's say, part of what IKEA does. We keep it to cotton. Emma.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Emma. I work for WaterAid. We are a large international NGO looking at access to water, sanitation and hygiene. We implement in 23 countries around the world. We also work on advocacy and my team's area, which is looking at private sector engagement. So working with organisations like GAP on their supply chains, the communities they depend on, and the investment that enables all other investments to work.
Yes. Nice, thanks. Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Voss, and I lead the Global Water Stewardship Program at Gap Inc. So our water program really covers three main pillars: water reduction, water replenishment, and water access. And for us, when we think about water, it really touches every piece of our supply chain, everything from growing the cotton to manufacturing the fabrics, the clothes, and also our workforce. So again, working with WaterAid in particular on that water access piece, ensuring that we have business continuity both from the production of our products as well as to the workforce that is needed to create those products.
Nice. Well, seems like you have rehearsed the introduction. That's good. Two people online. I'm very proud of those people. They unfortunately could not join. Ikra, straight away from Pakistan. So what time is it with you at the moment?
Well, it's 5:21 mark in the evening. Yeah.
Okay, so you're just before having dinner, right?
Yeah.
So thanks, Ikra. Can you shortly introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. This is Ikra here. I'm from Sapphire Textiles, one of the biggest textile manufacturers based in Pakistan. And specific to today's discussion, I overall manage the sustainability portfolio and juggle with a lot of new things happening in our sector. So water is one of the heartfelt challenge in Pakistan today. If you have recently also seen on the news that how the climate change is affecting Pakistan as a whole, and we think that the industry is a lot more responsible now when it comes to shifting scenarios and shifting priorities towards the well-being and livelihoods of the people who are involved throughout the supply chain. So we do have a lot of farming projects based in Pakistan, in Punjab and Sindh, where we work with a lot of cotton farming communities who are smallholders majorly. And we are trying our best to deal with this challenge today for the future of the generations coming. Yeah.
Thanks, Ikra. Appreciate making the time for us. And last, certainly not least, the European Space Agency. Beatrice, why are you here? I think it's good that you're here. Tell me.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. Apologies for not being there. I cannot say that I'm based in Pakistan as Ikra. I'm just in the Netherlands, but unfortunately I couldn't make it. So I work for the European Space Agency. I'm the Sustainability Application Officer, and I think most of you know and have an idea what ESA does. So, of course, the main part of the business of the agency is to deploy, design, and launch satellites that can be used for looking at our planet, also deep space. But we also see how space can be used down to Earth. And most of my job is to make sure that space is also used for the green transition to really achieve the objective of sustainability, of becoming net zero, and so on. And the textile, the fashion industry is part of it. So we try to promote using data coming from space to make sure that those very ambitious, challenging objectives of green transformation are met.
Yeah. So very important. So a good angle to the whole discussion, I would say. Yeah, we just learned already from Alison, it's not just about how we use water, but how also the climate change is impacting the predictiveness of what's coming out for them, if they have enough money in the end of the season. So I think water as such in a community is important. Emma, how do you look at cotton as such, as a sustainable commodity, or if you take it from your perspective, and I know also you look at the community impact a lot. So
we come from a couple of different angles. One is cotton growing as a workplace. So the changing needs of those workers to deal with extreme heat. For women, can they show up to work? Are there sanitation facilities for them, etc. We also work in the communities that supply those workers, and ensuring that, again, days lost to sickness because they're caring for sick children or they are sick themselves. What are those mechanisms that ensure that, one, we understand where those issues are? You have to ask the right questions. And social ethical audits, some better than others. Depends on how it's implemented, whether or not we find out what's actually going on. And then it's the how it's delivered. We particularly focus on training women, as in a Women in Water program that we're doing with GAP and others in India, training the women to become the agents of change.
And do you also see, and maybe also to you, Alison, do you also see that they are aware of the impact that they make? Because they are just looking, is there water? We should make sure cotton is growing, that we are securing the end of season output. So are they aware? Do they use data or meters? Do they have any idea, or they just do what they do and hope that it's enough to reach the output?
As in a community, you don't need data to know if you don't have a tap. You have a tap, nothing comes out. You have a tap, sometimes something comes out, but only an hour here and there. Or you have a tap, something comes out, you can't drink it. You have a secure place to bathe, to go to the toilet, or you don't. So those things are very, very obvious. Fluctuations in access, but also extreme events, so flooding. That you, to an extent, water availability and drought, you can behaviorally adjust to. It might mean walking further for water, but you can still access it. When there's a flood and it takes out all provision, you literally cannot function. You can't go to work until that livability is restored.
Yeah, and how? And then first, Alison. So how do you then understand what sometimes the impact is that you try to make if you go from one irrigation system to another, with also the climate change and impact going on, and basically you are the first organization as an NGO that is looking at how do you treat water, how do you use water, and you have to report that also to your clients. How do you work with that? If they have no data, they don't look, so how do they operate?
Good question. And I think, Emma, you're absolutely right. And because the cotton crop is an annual crop, farmers do see an impact that season. Before this, I worked in cocoa, which if you plant a new cocoa tree, it doesn't fruit for 5 years. So that's quite a long time to see any agricultural change. So farmers see this instant sort of connection with the techniques. So I think that it's a yield, which is it's about money in the pocket of the farmer, which is a really good metric. And then we were talking about how do you get deeper into water metrics? How can we measure how much is used? What's the reduction in that usage through better techniques? And I think that is a little bit more complicated, but it's definitely something we need to look at if we're really to demonstrate to communities this water stewardship that's really important.
Yeah, and it's also, and we discussed it with the analogy of your shirt, right? I mean, what is the water footprint? What are the kind of metrics that you use? Are there, maybe to you, Kate, are there any metrics where you see it's already predefined and we know what we want to measure, but not how we want to measure? Or also different metrics through different organizations, frameworks? So how do you look at it from in the end of the chain, I would say?
Yeah, so for us, we're really interested in how our fibers are produced, and more starting to think about what are the potential impacts and opportunities to enhance soil, water, health, and also community health. And so things like transitioning away from conventional cotton and towards organic or regenerative cotton. And qualitatively, there's a lot of information about improvements in terms of runoff, water quality, soil water holding capacity. Qualitatively, there's a statement that regenerative cotton is going to have those impacts and benefits compared to conventional cotton. But in addition to the growing practice, there's also variability geographically, right? Where regenerative cotton in California has different impacts than regenerative cotton in the lower Mississippi basin or in Pakistan or in India. And so that level of nuance and being able to go granular into really the metrics of what's actually happening at this farm with the soil health and also in terms of water use, whether that irrigated, is it rain fed, that data we don't have right now, and it's something that we need, because from my perspective as the water lead, we're trying to think about across our supply chain, how do we build a resilient supply chain that can manage increasing floods, increasing droughts, increasing seasonal variability. And the answers for that really require that local knowledge and that local intervention. But what we often are seeing is kind of industry like averages in a way that don't account for that geographic nuance. And so I think there's a real need to have more monitoring and data. And because we operate at a global scale, I think it'd be very hard to say every single farm is now going to have, in situ measurements at the farm level. But I think there's a real opportunity for leveraging things like satellite data, remote sensing, to start looking at changes in irrigation, groundwater levels, evapotranspiration, and really start understanding and compare, like, how are these practices actually impacting soil and water systems, and can we start actually building out a more robust data set about those practices and with that geographic nuance. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a real need there, and it's something that we don't have right now.
Okay, so Ikra, you're going to put a lot of sense in the ground, you're going to work technology. Are you the one then that will start doing it? I mean, I know you work towards Regen Ag. So how do you treat that? Is that a project? How do you measure the impact that you're trying to make? What is your perspective?
So I think, Mark, the right answer to it is that there is always, for such kind of projects, there is two-way strategy. These projects start as a very CSR-led initiative at first. And then when you see the potential, you slowly add up a lot of business modeling on top of it, where you need right partners to work with. So how we started in this area, it was quite something you can say new for the textile sector in Pakistan to go on ground and have their own organic and regenerative cotton farming projects. It's traditionally not done this way. A miller just simply buys its bales from ginners and they treat it as a raw material coming from Pakistan or abroad. It all depends, on what brands you are working for. But in our case, the main reason was, again, one thing that we wanted to, work on the revival of cotton in Pakistan, because in the last 1 decade, we have seen a very deep fall in the cultivation of cotton overall. So first of all, it was a CSR-led initiative at first. We were working on cotton revival in Pakistan. And when the whole world was, looking at us after the 2022 floods, what happened to the cotton in Pakistan and how the farming communities were devastated with the loss of livelihoods, of farmlands, of the crops and everything. So a lot of brands we work with, they came in with a lot of humanitarian support for us as well. And that was, I would say, a changing point for us as well, that we took opportunity and we really focused on upscaling of these projects into more farmlands, more farmer communities. And now today, successfully, we have got a lot of tangible certifications on the farmlands. It's majorly organic and a very small portion is the regenerative or cotton. And today, I would say it's far beyond than farming only. It's a lot more impact calculation, how you are making an impact on national level when it comes to, the overall cotton cultivation specifications and leading that towards, more major textile exports constitutes. But at the same time, I would say that the impact on social elements, including the livelihoods, and then the how the water is being treated, how the drip irrigation utility is increasing, how laser land leveling is getting part of all these measuring angles as well. It has been quite successful for us. And on top of it, the good part was that the government also took some initiatives towards such kind of technological things happening on ground. And today, in last 5 years, Pakistan have seen a lot of technology providers coming into business to support such projects. For example, no remote sensing initiatives were there in Pakistan as a government initiative or a private initiative. But today we do have some very nice and very successful entrepreneurs working in the technological support for the sector, and not only on remote sensing but also towards equipment, machineries. And I think all of these shows us that how impactful these things have been on ground. And ultimately, when a farmers, have successful crop, he's able to sell it at a good price. A supplier is engaged with them for taking up that cotton for a very strong brand with them. So this whole makes up a very strong success story for the farmer, especially the smallholder farmer, because for them it is a huge success story that the cotton is being taken as a national agenda rather than a regional agenda for them.
Yeah, I can see that. And you are part of the chain, right? You're a producer. If I think of textile, I think IKEA is one of the leading brand on a global scale. It's amazing how far you reach into everybody. So how are you set up if you look at this discussion? So how do you set up as an IKEA, as a large company, to deal with this and hear these stories? Is this also happening in your supply chain? And can you maybe share a bit of your perspective?
Sure, yeah. Thanks. Actually, from a textile perspective within IKEA, we've been working with water on our agenda for actually close to probably 20 years now, where we first started with effluent treatment plants in facilities, and we were the first to demand that in Pakistan, for example. So we've been working quite a while with the water topic. Also as well, if we think about cotton, as a founding member of the Better Cotton Initiative, it actually stemmed many years ago from projects in Pakistan in the Sindh Valley where water was a predominant factor taken into consideration, because conventional cotton, as many of you may know, is flooded and irrigated like that, and a lot of waste water, a lot of water is wasted, a lot of chemicals, over-chemical use. And I think the whole Better Cotton Initiative was one of the grounds of that, where it started to develop from there. And of course, we've been procuring better cotton as one of the areas. And where we're focusing now a lot, if we take our agricultural side, we focus a lot today on, of course, regen. We look at the different sources, and we have an agricultural footprint globally looking at that. But it's important as well that, we buy a lot of cotton, right? We probably buy around about 120,000 tons of cotton, so it's quite a substantial amount of cotton, which is in our product portfolio globally. And if we just sort of like follow the guideline element and move all of that to rain-fed Brazil, for example, that doesn't really solve the totality of the problem. Sure, we could probably have great reporting numbers in our CSRD and all of that, and tick in the box, but it's not about that. So we really need to, we have our global supply base as well. Pakistan is one of them, India, Bangladesh, China, and a number of other countries around the world. And so it's about how do we support those countries? How do we support the regions of cotton sourcing that we do to better the agricultural use? But also as well, we have a big focus, and at least my direct team looks after the production units of really driving the water agenda in the production units themselves. So really trying to push for the reduced water withdrawal, where we have stringent targets, where we've been measuring for quite a number of years now, and we have our baseline since 2019 of our water usage in production. So I think it's a full end-to-end, and it doesn't stop there, because we should also not forget as well the consumer usage at the end of it, right? And it's that full sort of product LCAs, as we call it, but looking at the totality. And it's not easy, right? In big organizations and big companies like ourselves as well, we sort of have our agricultural team focused on the upstream perspective. We have the supply chain, sort of my team, looking after the production elements. We have our retail divisions looking at the consumer innovation and everything. So it's about bringing all those actors together just within the corporate, as it were. And then, of course, all the activities we do outside of the corporate to connect up with partners and many actors outside as well.
Yeah. And maybe then you say collaboration, right? Partners?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
So Peter, I mean, from your perspective, you support companies, you help companies. What are the perspectives? Do you advise your customers as well, maybe to shift their sourcing geographies to be able to meet compliance?
Yeah. That's actually a very good piece of advice. Because if you're in the wrong spot for what you are doing, then you should move. But it's not just that simple, right? So it's what Kate says. You need information to make those decisions. And there's a difference between having enough information to make a good decision, should I move or should I go, or a data, basically analysis paralysis, right? Getting more and more data, and satisfy CDP and CDP water and and just do all the disclosure, and then forget about this farmer in Pakistan who needs to decide whether to plant on the 15th of June or on the 21st of June, right? That's a decision that determines that farmer's life for the rest of that season, right? So that analysis paralysis is always lurking, and we've been working a lot with 52 Impact, and that's where it's very useful, because you look at large pieces of land, you're using satellite technology, you're getting a lot of data that helps you to make a decision, and then you can do something. And at this moment, CSRD was actually a bad thing. It's kind of a step back, because now everybody got so upset about the disclosure that they're no longer doing things. And we heard some very nice examples of what's actually happening in India. Now, get people clean drinking water. Do it. Stop talking and analyzing. Do it. And you need decision-level data, but you don't want to get sort of dragged into that morass of, no, I need to measure everything in liters. Everybody who's measuring the water in liters is, and I'm going to say this out loud, is an idiot. Because the problem of water is in cubic hectometers. It's a much bigger scale. So by talking about the small scale, you keep thinking small. So a cubic hectometer, 2 football pitches, side by side, and then one, and another one next to it, right up. That's the scale. That's your minimum unit, right? And once you start thinking that big, you start thinking about the bigger solutions, and then you also realize that you need to be quicker with your data. You can't just get stuck. And that's all I have to say about that.
No, probably that's not all that you have to say about that. I don't believe that at all. I think we will hear more about that. So we just learned, Beatrice, that I mean, there's so much data around there. So where do you think, from an European Space Agency perspective, you chip in, and maybe you can disclose a bit on the program that is about to be launched, specifically also on cotton, where ASA is also a partner that tries to move this thinking into this direction. Can you elaborate a bit on that, Beatrice?
Yes, sure. Thanks. I think let's say the problem was already quite well stated by the previous panelists. So we cannot, I think, keep on doing things in terms of sustainability for the textile industry as things have been done in the past. So we really need to move away from this traditional cultivation model that has been following for cotton, which is very heavy from use of natural resources, not only for water, because it's also bad, let's say, for the soil, for the greenhouse emissions, for the loss of biodiversity and so on, moving towards regenerative farming, moving towards organic farming, where you really look after the health of the whole ecosystem. And I think in this transformation space can play an important role. I'm not saying that it will solve all the issues that were mentioned until now, but for instance, if you use space data, you don't have the problem about deploying in situ samples geographically. space by definition is borderless. So a sensor looking over Pakistan can also be used for looking after India or other areas around the world. It also gives different coverage in terms of spatial resolution, temporal resolution. So there is a level of flexibility. And also very importantly, it helps to measuring the impact that was mentioned before. We have sensors now that have been flowing, I don't know, in the last 15, 20 years. So thanks to this history of data, we can also see how the situation has been evolving in the past years. I heard before about what has been the impact of climate change and so on. Of course, a lot of this impact is under our eyes. Now we just talk to the farmers, they can tell us about their impact. But if we want to take, let's say, an helicopter view, if we want to have more precise information about the impact of this phenomenon, we need to use space data. So we mentioned about water quality, the loss of biodiversity, the emission of greenhouses. All these things likely can be measured by using space data. And also maybe often is not considered. Some of you mentioned how also complex is the value chain when it comes to textile. There are so many different actors that are involved. Now we go from fibers until retailing, trading. It's a very, let's say, spread value chain globally in terms of geographical outreach, but also very diverse in terms of the different actors that are involved. Well, also in that case, I think we need to emphasize the added value that space can bring. Without going to the technicalities, but if we think about satellite navigation, so just to be practical, Galileo or GPS or any other global navigation system that we can think about, these technologies are the ones that enable us to tell where our assets are along the value chain. So thanks to space, we can really track precisely and timely where our asset is. And if you think about the implication, it's very important because on one side, the consumer can make a aware choice when he buys a product because he's really sure about the origin of that product. But it's really also important for the smallholders that Ikra was mentioning before, because they can access directly the value chain. They can give more, let's say, also economic value to their product because they can access directly the whole value chain, the whole distribution. So I think the implications are really important also for the different, let's say, players of the value chain. And coming to your point about the new projects, of course, we are very aware that as ESA cannot work in isolation. For us, creating partnership, working with industries, working with the stakeholders that are really active in that sector is really important. I'm glad, for instance, to say that GAP is one of our partners. Hi, Kathleen. They joined us in our task force that we launched recently on bioeconomy, because we have the technology, we have the asset, but we need to make sure that our technologies, our developments are in line with expectations that and the needs of the user, of the customers.
Yeah. I think a very nice bridge. You said, let's hear it also from the farmer. I mean, the impact has to be made there. And I think the person that is furthest away from space is actually the lady in the field that is trying to make a living by growing cotton. So maybe Alison, can you introduce you in your organization? You've shot a video.
Yes.
Of a farmer, Ranjanben.
Yeah, that's right.
So give us a bit of context on the perspectives that we will hear in a minute.
Yeah, so she again is from Northwest India, from Gujarat. She's been working in our program for 3 years now. She's a regenerative farmer. So Beatrice, back to your point about this isn't just about water, it's about this sort of net positive impact at a community level. She's also one of our climate change ambassadors. I think you'll hear from her how she's, quite often we see the bore well is low in the village. We're seeing a lot of governments, whether it be Egypt, whether it be India, they control water access through the canals. So quite often there's a control point. We see farmers might have to go out in the middle of the night because that's when their water allocation happens. So you can imagine, and there are, terrible stories of, there's a perhaps there's a big pit somewhere that they fall in, wild boars, etc. So all those sort of safety elements. So we'll hear a little bit about the work she's been doing on her family farm. So,
nice. So
and it's in Gujarati, so we've got a little bit of translation at the bottom you can read. So
let's hear it from Rajan Ben.
મારું નામ તડવી રંજનબેન અરવિંદભાઈ છે. હું છેલ્લા 10 વર્ષથી કાટકોઈ ગામમાં રહું છું. અમારો મુખ્ય વ્યવસાય ખેતી છે અને સાથે સાથે પશુપાલન પણ કરીએ છીએ. અને ખેતીમાં અમે મુખ્ય પાક કપાસ ઉગાડીએ છીએ. અમારી પાસે પણ બોરવેલ છે પણ લાઇટ કનેક્શન નથી, જેથી અમારે ડીઝલ મશીન ચલાવવાની જરૂર પડે છે, જે ખૂબ મોંઘું પડે છે અને સાથે પ્રદૂષણ પણ કરે છે. વધુ પડતા પાણીના ઉપયોગના કારણે ઉનાળાની ઋતુમાં અને કપાસના અંકુરણના મુખ્ય સમયે પિયત માટે પાણીનો અભાવ પડે છે, જેથી પાકનું ઉત્પાદન ઓછું આવે છે. કાર્યક્રમ દરમિયાન અમને એકાંતર ચાસ, પિયત આવરણ અને ટપક સિંચાઈ જેવી પાણી વ્યવસ્થાપનની વિવિધ તકનીકો વિશે જાણવા મળે છે. આમ અમે બીજા વર્ષે એકાંતર ચાસ, પિયત અને ત્રીજા વર્ષે આવરણનો ઉપયોગ કર્યો છે, જેના પરિણામે છૂટા પાણીની તુલનામાં પાણીની બચત થઈ છે. અમારા બોરવેલમાં પાણીનું લેવલ હવે ઓછું થતું નથી અને કપાસને યોગ્ય સમયે પિયત મળે છે, તેથી અમને પિયતવાળા વિસ્તાર જેટલું જ ઉત્પાદન મળે છે. પાણીની વ્યવસ્થાપનને કારણે કપાસનું ઉત્પાદન વધે છે, જેનાથી અમને વધુ આવક અને સમૃદ્ધિ મળે છે.
Yes, I think very nice. So thank you very much to reach out to this farmer for this session to get a bit of her perspective. Hearing it from you is already enough, but it's always good. She is in the field.
She is.
And she talked about overuse of water, right? I mean, sometimes they use so much water in the community, they don't know if there's enough. And then during the irrigation times, they find out there's not enough water to irrigate. How, and maybe Ikra, so going to you, you also have these kind of farmers, right? You try to bring them also to region Ag, to think about the soil, to keep the water in the soil, maybe to change to irrigation techniques. What would you like to see to be more actionable to help these farmers like Rajan Ben?
I think in all these years, in the last 1.5 decade, we have seen better cotton evolving in Pakistan. It started from Pakistan. I don't know how much of you know or not. In all these years, there have been a lot of work being done on ground through NGOs, through private sector, through government. But what I see as a pain, because I'm also an agriculture graduate, that the farmer livelihoods are not improving in a way that how much investments have been being done for the development of farming communities. So as a sustainability practitioner in a country like Pakistan, what role every person who is involved in this sector, whether it's through a brand, whether it's through a development organization, I think the impact should be driven towards improving livelihoods now. We talk about water, we talk about soil, we talk about carbon. Every new topic is coming after every few years, but the livelihoods are not changing in that certain manner. We still see smallholder farmers juggling with farming debt. We still see them, going through crisis when the season is off. In Pakistan, you don't see farmers as women. We see 100% of cotton pickers are women, but I think less than 1% are registered as farmers, especially women, which is a pain. In a farming country where women play the crucial role of running an agribusiness or running a farming structure of their families, they are not considered as, the registered, named farmer that gives a lot of empowerment to women as well. So I think these are the two main things that I really focus on in our projects as well, that we need to, really drive finances towards livelihoods of these people, whether it's through, stakeholder engagements, whether it's through direct to farm approaches. But now the impact should also consider that how the farmer income is turning into living income for them.
Yeah, thank you.
In reality, today, it's not in that way. But in future, I think every brand should also take it as part of their strategy, that how the raw materials are going to drive the living income for the farmers. Yeah.
Yeah. And Emma, do you think there are enough incentives to back up the story of ICRA? So where should it start, and what do you see, and where do you think the initiative should be driven? Because we're all responsible in the chain, in the end, to drive that livelihood of the farmer and make them more sustainable. But how do we incentivize the community and the farmers? Do you have any idea what should be done?
Well, what was very striking in that video was that farmer is choosing between livelihood and health, whereas that shouldn't be a choice they need to make. One enables the other. But the mechanisms that enable the investment at the farmer scale, how does that cascade up? So what we see developments in CSRD, advocating for due diligence and systematic approaches, but that doesn't necessarily cascade down to action at the scale needed where it matters. So I think that knitting process, and it might be via organisations like GAP that are then influencing their suppliers or working with the CottonConnects and the BCIs of this world to go, well, where are those intervention points? Where do we have leverage? Where can we influence, whether it's allocation of water or the technologies required to capture and distribute for both livelihoods and for domestic dignity uses. So there's a lot of different elements to it.
Agree, Kate?
Yes,
I see.
I think, hearing the example of this woman, but then also, Emma's remarks just now, I think about our work in India with the Women in Water Alliance, now the Women in Water Collaborative, which really tried to take this and does take this holistic perspective of recognizing what is prioritizing both the livelihoods as well as the environmental impacts, recognizing that in some ways, like appropriate management of water resources, and also think about the chemicals and water quality on farm practices, does have influence drinking water supplies locally. And so understanding that holistic view, and then really working with farmers, and particularly women as well, on not just kind of education around water use, kind of on-farm practices, but also basic life skills training in terms of how to open a bank account, how to take out loans, how to participate in local kind of community-led organizing around what are the interventions for that community that are going to matter most, and providing that leadership training to women to really grasp and take hold and lead their communities. And we've seen incredible success through that partnership with WaterAid, and it continues to grow and to expand. And it's looking at really that holistic view. And again, I think it's not us coming in and saying this is what you need to do because this is the right way to do it. It's providing the skills and the tools so that women really can lead. And we see generational kind of impacts of that in terms of income generation, education, access for whole families, communities. And it's in a way, it then sparks even more kind of economic growth, livelihood, protection, livelihood, expansion for those individuals. So
the scale's important there as well.
Yeah,
the scale,
collaboration.
So we hear now a lot of perspectives. Peter, you're a bit on the side, although you know a lot, have a strong opinion. I didn't hear the government yet, or the local governments, Peter. So, what is their role? I mean, is it? Who should driving it? So,
it's enormous.
That's enormous.
Yeah. So just a bit of perspective. So companies, they generate a lot of economic wealth, and we like companies, right? But the water consumption by a company's action isn't that large compared to the cubic hectometers I was just talking about, right? So the largest beer brewer on the planet consumes about as much water as the province that I live in the Netherlands, which is a tiny country, right? So when you look at that scale, you need somebody who brings the scale, and that's the government. So that's one argument. The companies are not that big, but the other side of the argument is what we're talking about. Agriculture uses most of the water. So you're looking at truly large volumes of water that need to be managed by somebody or some institute that knows how to do that. So you're looking at institutional capacity and the right ways of managing these water resources. That's super important. And that supersedes all the efforts that are being done by the people at this table. But the efforts done at this table help to drive the focus on these very necessary institutional changes. So you need to do what you guys are doing to wake up the right people in government to take the appropriate action at the appropriate scale. If you miss that step from doing the actions at company level to what the government needs to do, you're between your percentage of water consumption, which is several factors lower than what agriculture is using. And because this is cotton, it's got that direct link, which is fantastic. So you can really make that leap, I think, easier, although it's never going to be easy, right? But easier than if you were in steel or something like that, right? So with cotton, I think we're in an excellent position to take what we've done already, all these thousands and thousands of households with access to clean drinking water, and then take that to the next level, which is improving the soil in Gujarat and improving the water retention and reducing water consumption and reducing chemicals in the water and in the groundwater and all that sort of. That level, at the state level in Gujarat, for example, or in the Sindh Valley in Pakistan, it doesn't matter. That would be fantastic. And I think it's doable. It's doable within our generation.
Yeah. Kelvin, I'm looking at you. I mean, IKEA probably has its own department working with governments and the skill you're operating in. For sure, you must work there.
Absolutely, and thank you for that, Peter. I think it's such an important factor. I was at an earlier listening to an earlier panel today. I don't know if any of you were listening in that, but it was a debate about should governments take the lead, or or is it everyone else's responsibility, i.e. private actors and so forth. And really, right off the bat, I thought, but it's both and, right? This is a weird debate. I think it was really good because the panels pushed both sides of the story, and I think it ultimately came to that it's both and, right? And I think that's something that we, as a company as well, advocate a lot is in different areas about trying to push the agenda on water. So if we take in, and we like to think of it as well, there is the commercial aspect of water. So, I mean, my team drives the energy side of things as well in the production. And those are quite easy conversations to have with the big suppliers and big partners around the world because we can get a really good return of investment on investing in renewables. But the return of investment in investing in water is really not there, right? So in terms of monetary perspectives. So how do we get those incentives and incentivize them? So we try to look at business model sourcing aspects, but also to have conversations with governments to sort of say, you currently don't have a tariff on water. So we partner up together with other brands as well. For example, in Bangladesh, we're partnering up with some other big Swedish apparel brands. And having a conversation through the UN, discussing with the Bangladeshi government about trying to push them to put a tariff on water, because currently textile manufacturers are withdrawing it, free of charge from the groundwater. So how do we also try to push incentives in that direction? And how do we also work with governments in water basins and things? Because we can't. I like to say, if our team throws all our energy and resources into a factory or a farm or something like that, it doesn't matter if the whole region is affected.
Correct.
We have to work on more of a stewardship perspective and encourage our suppliers and encourage our actors outside as well to work beyond the walls, beyond the borders, if we're really going to make a difference in water, for example. So I think this is what a lot of the work that we try to do and try to support and influence. But it's exactly like you say, it's not just governments and it's not just, private sector. It's both and.
So you talk about the putting tariffs, so water is
Maybe.
difficult to monetize, but also you see governments now moving to allocate the scarcity of water. So they want to control with the water boards how much water do you get. Ikra, do you have that same kind of level of governmental influence where they say in times of drought and scarcity of water, you're only allowed to use an amount of water to grow cotton and to be able to produce cotton? Is the government part of this discussion? Because Pakistan, I know, has a large cotton industry.
Yeah, it is true, but not specifically cotton, but overall the agriculture sector. It's same like in India. In Pakistan also it is managed by a canal system. So there is a certain allocation of, canal water that is available to cotton also. So overall they have a strategy on agriculture and farming related zones, but not specific to cotton right now.
Okay. So
Mark, if I can add something.
Beatrice, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just reflecting on what was said so far, about the famous farming, how we can make them more protagonists in all the process. And of course, I mean, let's say our bit in all this process as the European Space Agency, we do fund projects, right? So we do give funding for companies to develop solutions, and a big part of these projects is then aimed at testing, deploying solutions. So we do, let's say, give funding to the company to look after the technical part, because that's the core business of the agency. But in the same project, we also ask companies to look after the business case that was mentioned before. Who are the partners? What's the revenue sharing that should be existing between the different stakeholders? Because what we have seen, and we should learn from the error that we made in the past, most of these initiatives that we ran in the past were projects. What it means is that they had a start date and an end date. And when the end date was finished, that's it. And that's what we want to avoid. We always tell our companies, you have to build an operational running service. So something that will exist, even after the conclusion of the project. And that's, of course, it's a kind of mindset, mantra that we need to repeat ourselves, because we do have a very strong, let's say, technical focus. But if we want to make sure that the transformation takes place, we also need to look after the business component, the business plan, who are the different partners, how we can ensure that the sustainability also from an economic point of view will exist. So that's, of course, it's not easy. And the strategy that we put in place is to have as many players as possible around the table. So we do create partnership, we do create collaboration internationally, because even if we are the European Space Agency, we have collaboration with partners all around the world. And that's really an important asset. It's really important that we are, let's say, as inclusive as possible, and everyone is involved in the decision process. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah. You touch upon the economical part, right? So everything in the end is costing money, right? So we all have same ambitions. We want to realize targets. We are all working either close to the farm or trying to work with governments. But there is a bill in the end to pay as well. So who's picking up the bill? Is that you, Beatrice? So I know you are do some funding in projects to work to see how we can get technology in. So that's one part of the equation. So sorry, Beatrice, for putting you on the spot there. But I know for sure saving the planet is not your core business as an IKEA or a Gap Inc. I think it would be more you, Alison. I mean, you want to save the world. You're the NGO. So it should start with you.
I think it was quite interesting, and I've been talking about business ethics recently because this is about doing the right thing in supply chains. And we have traceable cotton, and I think Ikra, you talked earlier about this move from CSR. I started my journey in CSR quickly, actually in philanthropic funding as well. But if these are to be, and Beatrice, you're right, if these are to be truly sustainable, they have to be embedded commercially with business. It has to make sense for business. And I think quite often in businesses, we lose track of, because especially if you're shareholder owned, you're in this cycle of quarterly reporting, annual reporting, but you have to look beyond that. And that's about what's the impact on the environment? What are we leaving behind? Are we leaving the environment in a better place than we found it? What about the people? And we haven't talked about the human rights aspect of water and access to water yet. What are the people in this supply chain? How are they treated? Are we treating them fairly? I want to be able to buy great jeans that I know that those people are treated well in that supply chain. And then what is it that we need to plan for the future? And that is really about business ethics to me. And I think that sometimes we need to go back to those fundamentals. And I think everyone here, we're all, and I love the EU process. I mean, we're all trying to work out which laws are coming in and out of the EU, what we're going to have to report, what data we're going to need. And it is the EU process. I've lobbied before in previous roles. That is the EU. But if you go back to fundamentals, it's about what kind of businesses are we in and that we're proud to be part of. And I think then the money follows, because that follows your business ethics.
Nice.
That's my business ethics.
Everybody agree?
Partially. I think the question is the wrong question. So sustainability gets defined in very different ways. So it's not an NGO's responsibility to make it a better world. It's the only world we've got, right? So whether we are good boys or bad boys or good girls or bad girls, we are stuck on this planet. So we need to manage this planet and all its resources responsibly, with an eye towards the future, right? So that means that you have to make a proper business case for what you're doing, including the future of your business and your entire supply chain. So you can't just willy-nilly rob the planet of resources. It happens, right? It is happening continuously. It's the wrong way, because that's not sustainable. And I think sustainability has been translated over the last 2-3 decades as doing the right thing. And I think that's the wrong translation of the word sustainability. It's literally, being here in the future, doing what you're doing, profitably, in everybody's interest. So, and you asked, who's picking up the bill? Right now, the planet is. And that's wrong, because the planet will run out of resources, and then what happens with us, right? We run out as well. That's it. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
And then the bugs take over again.
Very valuable lesson. So thank you very much for your perspectives. So I don't know if it works. We'll find out. So we have. I'm trying to get it on the screen. We try to get some input from you as well, from the audience. Can I get an okay from the technical team if it works? So we will find out, and otherwise we will do it in a different way. So basically, there's a question on the screen, and I have to look to see this question. So what is the most important solution or action to take to drive a resilient cotton supply chain? Because probably you in the room have ideas as well, are involved or have an interest in this. So let's see if it works, and if not, we can maybe give some people the word to it. If you can put it in 1 or 2 free words, because otherwise it gets really messy. Also the people online. So while the people are trying to get their heads around this question. Kate, I have to keep you sharp. So is there, it's an awful question that incorporates a lot. So before we get some reactions from the audience, how do you feel about the resilience?
Oh, there we have it there.
About the resilience piece.
Yes, the resilience piece. It's on the screen now here.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, as I said before, it's interesting. I think we're seeing this transition in terms of environmental impacts toward, more organic, regenerative cotton, which I do think helps to build that resilient supply chain. So we know qualitatively and more slowly quantitatively that is more sustainable in the long term. And then I think as we start integrating the livelihoods piece of that as well and thinking about, yes, as a brand where we're a consumer, right, we're purchasing cotton, but then how do we, in a way, take what we've learned from Women in Water Collaborative and take those lessons and scale it more broadly by working with other brands, working with
Technology.
working with technology, with other brands, with the nonprofits, with the public sector, with really as many partners as we can. I think in the water stewardship community, we often talk about collective action. And so truly harnessing that in this really, I think, agricultural supply chain. There's been a few sessions this week. It's really a gnarled web, messy challenge. And so I think there's not any single solution. It's really going to take all kind of perspectives and interests collaborating together and trying both bottom-up approaches, right? So kind of like grassroots approaches as well as grass tops, kind of the top-down. So I think as many levers as we can pull, whether it's on the policy side, I think about things like crop insurance for farmers who are trying out different practices, or it's a company like Gap Inc. investing in a specific project, looking at our fiber portfolio. It's going to take everything, but I think that we're moving in that direction. We're thinking about the technology. We're thinking about how do we partner with other brands? How do we partner with the farmers? And really start exploring
Collective actions.
Collective action,
In the end,
exactly.
collective actions. So do we have any output already on just looking? Do we have any responses yet? The technology already works or doesn't work, so that's good. Maybe we'll, for now, just see if you've listened very carefully to this audience. I think a lot of perspectives in the value chain. Is there anything you would like to see or disagree, or maybe give your perspective to it as well? So I'd like to open the floor a bit. Can somebody bring the microphone? Maybe first tell who you are and maybe a question to us or maybe to somebody in the panel. So we'll get the mic to you. And maybe there are also questions on the online. Looking to my colleague as well. If there are any questions, please put them in the chat, and we will try to see if we have time to get a question. Please,
thank you very much for your presentation and your talk. I am Noor from Iraq. I am from Ministry of Water Resources. You all know that's how Iraq suffers from water shortage and water pollution. And I have two questions. One regarding I'm sorry about the names, but about this farmer that you mentioned that you help her in getting a climate ambassador and something about roadmap. So I am really curious how this can help her, because I think it's the same thing I am thinking is about decision making, this climate ambassador. So it's about business, is about to help policymaker. So how this farmer get advantage of being a climate ambassador? This is one thing, and it's important for me that if there is any advantage, so we can like transfer this experience in my country. As I am now one of the ambassador climate, I am on my way in this course, and also have another question to the Doctor, Mr., I'm not sure. It's about that your job is to make sure that water, whatever it's used, it has to be like in specific criteria that will not danger or harm the environment. So is all this related to the technology, or there is another things that you offer to make sure of this? And thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
To start with our
first?
climate change ambassadors, I think women get support through training, so they learn about all the techniques that we talked about. They also learn composting techniques. They make their own natural pesticides on the farm, so they learn quite a lot of techniques. I think for me, perhaps the difference is that we gave them the respect and a title, and I think that really set them apart in the community, that they were given the recognition for what they were doing. And then I think the idea that they themselves were training other women was really powerful, because they then took that knowledge and were able to disseminate it. And I think, IKRA, it's the same in Pakistan, that the villages are all connected through relation, through marriage and parties, all this information sort of gets disseminated. So for me, it was the education of that individual woman, giving her the title and respect, but then also sort of empowering her to go and teach other women. And I think they were the three components for success.
Yeah. Maybe for the gentleman, Peter?
It's just Peter, but thank you. Thank you for your question. It's a very good question. So it's not just technology. So when you look at water, it's a three or multiple dimension problem, right? It even includes the time. So you're looking at a given area, a catchment area is our most common area that we look at. So there's water coming in, which is normally through rain, precipitation, and then that water gets used in all sort of different forms. And to make that sustainable, you need to look at how it's organized. So there's a big political, organizational, institutional element to that, stakeholders. There is a technical aspect to it, how much water is being used, and can we reduce that amount of water that's currently being used through better irrigation. And there's lots and lots of different ways of doing that, from stop flood irrigation to move to drip irrigation, and then even apply technology to the drip irrigation that makes the drip irrigation even more efficient. And then there's the whole data aspect. Okay, so we're doing all this. Is it actually helping us? And that's over time. So we, with the satellites, the really cool thing is we can go back in time and see how it was 20 years ago in Iraq. And then, in your very specific case, we can look at it, see how it has been developing. Then we look at when we did our interventions, which could be all sort of intervention, technical or organizational or whatever, and then see what the effects is. So it's a very complex way of looking at the whole thing. But then you need to include all those aspects of, like, it's not just nature, but it's also this, society. Are people getting access to clean drinking water? Yes, great. Where is that clean drinking water coming from? So that's another problem to tackle. And we saw this with a client of mine who's not in the room, but in Kenya, when the government went from an autocratic government to a democratic government. All of a sudden people needed access to clean drinking water, because before the autocrat just ignored them, and now the Democrat had to deal with them because they were voting. So all of a sudden there's this water access problem, and getting the water into the taps for all these people was a real issue that my client actually did a lot of work to help the discussion and get the right policies in place. But even if you've got all that, then you need to put all those taps in, and that's when you call Emma. That's what I do. But and that's another part of the whole organizational aspect of this very complex problem, is that everybody knows something, and you need to get all those different parties together to tackle this very complex situation, and then also make sure that they don't start fighting each other, because that also happens a lot. So it's, the not-for-profits, they also need money, they need to be paid as well, so you need to take that into account. Where's the money coming from? And the water access people, okay, they get the water, but it's coming from a wetland that is then going to suffer. That we don't want that to happen as well, and we don't want the farmers to suffer. So all those aspects need to be put together. So you can imagine every single program is super complex, and we work with these things called water funds, where we basically put all those parties together in a single organization to drive that change. The lifetime of such a water fund is at least a generation, 25 to 30 years. It's that much time you need to actually make things a lot better. So it's not just a little bit better, but really step change improvements. So it's a very long-winded answer to your question. I'm very sorry, but if you want to know more, I'll be around. We can talk a little bit more. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Please say who you are and to whom you raise the question, or to all of them.
Thank you for your presentations. My name is Elise Lanting and I work for a Dutch Water Authority. And indeed, I think my question is a little bit to all of you, maybe. And Mark touched upon it a little bit. We are also heading in the Netherlands towards the point that we say new users or great users of water should be like excluded from the water source or natural water source, and they should be responsible for their own water generation. For example, making anti-salation, or how do you say it, make it salt water to make use of that. Yeah. So, and you are also a lot of work, cotton is of course in other parts of the world, but how do you measure that the usage of the water in those countries doesn't affect the societal, the public needs? Because in the Netherlands, we all foresee that in the coming 30 years, there's going to be a real shortage. So new users shouldn't affect the main public,
availability.
Availability.
Yeah, very good question. So maybe, thank you for that question. So maybe also giving you all your perspective, but you will have less than 1 minute also to be in time for the end of the session. So we'll give everybody the chance to respond, give their perspective. I'll just start off with you, Peter.
Very, very quickly. In the Netherlands, price the water at its proper level and let the market sort it out. That's what I would say.
The price mechanism. That's one.
But in the Netherlands, this doesn't work everywhere.
Calvin.
Yeah, I think each country has its own, and each region has its own challenges. So I think it's about focusing on that, whether it's monetary perspective. I think we started this whole conversation about metrics, right? And I think you framed it quite well, Peter, as well. Not to get caught up in too much metrics as well. I often say sometimes we do get caught up in too much data. And I often use the analogy of ask the question like an 8-year-old would ask the question, right? We often can give them a better answer than all the KPIs and numbers around it. But at the same time, those numbers do give us sources to work from. So measuring things.
Keep it simple as well.
Yeah.
Emma.
I'd say make it everyone's problem. So if you have a new user that is wanting to access water, what's the trade-off for that? And we work with organisations that are already saying we can't access water for irrigation because there isn't enough for domestic supply. So in order to have that extraction permit, we are investing in this community nearby, or investing in restoring a wetland, or whatever it is that helps then contribute to that supply that they then want to use.
Thank you. Kate.
I think one area that we're really interested in exploring, and I think it can expand not just like within an operational fence line, like manufacturing of a company, but also in agriculture, is reuse. Like really, can we reuse that single drop of water across different industries, different individuals, sources, like domestic can get reused,
point. Reclaim
right?
water,
Reuse.
Reuse the water.
Reuse, that's
Thank you.
point, yeah.
Alison.
I think for me, it's about localization. Calvin, you talked about. I mean, although I'm based in the UK, the majority of my team is in market. So this is about empowering communities. It's empowering local government through knowledge. And for me, that's at the heart of success.
Thank you. Beatrice.
Yeah, I will give a very practical answer in the sense that we do have tools already and algorithms to show us how the future will look like. Now, I'm sure you have heard about digital twin, what if scenario. So I would say, okay, case by case, we are adding a new user. What's going to be the impact in X years? We don't have to create new data. We have the data already there. Just run the simulation, use this tool, and you will see what is the impact.
Thank you. Last, Ikra.
Yeah. So I think for a country like Pakistan, we still need better management practices for the current resources, and water is one of them.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. So first of all, thank you to the whole panel. Thank you, Ikra, Beatrice, Peter, Calvin, Emma, Kate, and Alison. So for the session, we are at the end of the session. We will, if there are any questions, put them in the chat. We'll come back to you, leave your name or your email address, and we get back to you. So thank you very much for being online and here in the room. And I hope that at least you have some good takeaways on how cotton can be sustainable and more resilient in the future. So thank you very much.